You wake up praying for peace. I wake up praying to ruin it.
I don't set alarms, bitch, I set fires. Your good moves just ammo, and I'm a supplier. You sipping coffee, I spit in the cup. Best part of my day is fucking yours up. I'm that bad decision you regret too late. Let knock at the door, you can't escape. Every smile you fake is another face I break. I'm the crack in the mirror like the two choking on cake. Best part of my day is fucking yours up. Your routine ain't safe when I show up. Your mood is my massacre, your look at my feast. Your bedtime's the grave and I tuck you in deep. Your playlist skips, your place with death, Lord OMG. Your happy thoughts ain't shit to me. I'll trick you while walking out the door. Make you bite the curb just to settle the score. You late to work, that's me in disguise. Red light stack up, watch your patience die. I slash your tires while you pray for luck. Best part of my day is fucking yours up. Your happiness cracked to my boots, can your teeth. Your laughter drowns in a puddle beneath. You played a good day, too bad. It's
Part of my day is fucking yours up.
I turn schedules into funerals. I turn plans into holes in the ground. I don't smile unless you're in a bad mood. I don't laugh unless it's your throat my hands around. Best part of my day is fucking yours up. Fucking yours up. Fucking yours up. Fucking yours up. I treat your ribcage like a xylophone play till it's mapped out of tune. Turn your wind into your face, scatter teeth across the room. I don't squash beef, I'm marinated in your blood. Serve it up bare while your family chops or sound of a thud. I've been spies to the break in my fist. Your face is feedback, and I love practicing on it. I drag your body through the street without a fucking care to light you up so the whole block smells like she covered in bird hair. Your excuses leaked out, call it shooting star. I cut your throat just to watch how far. Call me a skulker, I remodel with blades. Carve my initials until your heartbeat fades. Every sprain's a blade, press in your lungs, and I'll stick to the ending where silence comes. You claimed it tomorrow, I'm going to plot. Best part of my day is fucking yours up on the spot.
Have a nice day. And remember, smile, bitch. Be chillin' it.
No, you're not blocked. What up, folks? That was Death Lord. Best part of my day is fucking yours up. It is pinned in the live chat. How's everybody's day going? I just happened to watch the most interesting conversation earlier. And I definitely am going to have to watch it with you. Because it's quite embarrassing. It gives us some insight into why Fat Boy won't doesn't want chit chat. Plus size model. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Because this is embarrassing. If this is how he debates or converses, whatever, no wonder he doesn't want to talk to me. This was quite embarrassing. I listened to this earlier today. This is supposed to be a debate between numbnuts and a former police officer called Counterpoints. I never heard of them and him until today. So, oh yeah, he's live with Fupa now for sure. Yeah, they're over there doing their little suck fest. You know what I mean? All right, your turn, buddy. Come on. I was messaging with Death Lord. Yeah, he knows. I'll promote artists that sound good and don't copyright claim me. So that's why his link is pinned in the live chat, and I play his music, and I'm trying to promote him. This is how we kill the control over music that's happened for forever. Support artists that are not under labels, that are not under contracts. The Felix Fupa Circle Jerk. I like that one. That's pretty good. Yeah, this is supposedly a debate. I'm fairly certain there was no $1,000 put up between either of these two to have this conversation here. So best sounds and lyrics. Yep. This is very embarrassing. I'm gonna be pausing it periodically to make some funny points.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I am Sarah the Raging Tomato here, bringing to you another live debate between the one and only John Felix. And of course, you know him. He's been here before, Connor from Counterpoints. The statement of the evening is police are trained to violate the Constitution. John, if you'd like to begin with your opening statement, please.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. Connor, hi. Nice to meet you, sir. So
we devolved from sir to other things.
I'm a 20-year plus police and government accountability activist and lifelong constitutionalist. And I've been studying the police and government for many decades now. And anyone who gives it a good close look watches their behavior versus what is written down in the Constitution. The two things are antithetical to each other. Like your right to privacy, for instance, just to keep it basic, you have a right to keep your person's papers, houses, and effects to be private unless you did something wrong. Well, almost the first thing every cop does when he encounters you is he gives you those brackets and he says, let me see some ID. The thing is they believe that that's just normal. That's routine. That has become de facto.
Who the fuck is that? I don't know who this is. Anybody know who this guy is either? Counterpoints? Anybody in the chat? If you know, tell me in the chat, because I don't know.
When in fact, what that is, when a cop says to you, let me see some ID, and you haven't done anything wrong, what he's literally saying to you is, please surrender your right to privacy that you are guaranteed under the Fourth Amendment.
Oh.
Please surrender.
It says her name on there. Sarah the Raging Tomato.
Surrender that to me because I asked you to do it. And if you don't do it, the overwhelming majority of cops from coast to coast, video after video, thousands of videos, they get angry, they push, they coerce, they lie, and then sometimes they even get violent. Just for the fact that you won't hand over your little plastic card, even when you're not supposed to. And that's just one example of many. I mean, I don't know how long I can go. I can go, 8 minutes of... I could just give example after example like that, for instance. Or the fact that, you know, somebody that knows the law or starts talking about constitutional rights, again, video after video, coast to coast, from department to department, someone starts talking about their constitutional rights, cops get angry. They start calling them sovereign citizens. They immediately need backup. If they were trained to follow the Constitution, they'd be like, oh, we're good, man. Hey, call off those units. We're good. This guy knows his stuff. He's a constitutionalist just like we are. We swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. This guy gets it. We're good. We have a real American here. But instead, it's the exact opposite. Once someone starts talking about their rights and exercising their constitutional rights, it pisses the police off to no end. And if they're not trained to get upset by someone exercising their rights they swore to preserve, protect, and defend, if they're not trained to get upset, then why do they get upset? If they were trained to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution like they swore to do, they would be so happy when somebody said, no, thank you, I don't want to ID, or no, sir, I don't want you searching my car, or come back with a warrant. That would make a police officer proud if an American said, come back with a warrant. Instead, it's the exact opposite. And it's because they're trained to circumvent and get around people's constitutional rights, either through threat, duress, or coercion, one way or another. Fantasy football.
I muted myself. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And Connor, to you, please.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me okay, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So watching behavior versus what's written down. I mean, I could probably agree to that. So for instance, I was told in the academy during my training that Americans, well, the thing that makes our country great is the Constitution of the United States, and the fact that if you don't commit crime, I would cite that as a counterexample to the thesis. However, I will admit that there are dickhead cops who are out there who push the boundaries. But the training, once again, is that we have consensual encounters, meaning that if you have not committed a crime and we just ask you for your ID and you tell us to go F ourselves, then we have to go F ourselves. As a matter of fact, you're saying that you can show video after video after video of cops getting pissed off because they're being told to F themselves during a consensual encounter. I would say that during consensual encounters, I was told to F off repeatedly. And I was like, okay, nice. Have a nice day. Thank you for talking to me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because we're on body camera now. You think that like cop behavior is bad now? It's probably 90% reduced now that we have body cameras, now that we have cell phone cameras, okay? Also, I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm going to say there's a textualist interpretation of the Constitution, whereas there's actually the legal limits, okay? Every right that's given in the Constitution is not an unlimited right, okay? It's a limited right. So, for instance, we could read the First Amendment.
Oh man, I hear a whole bunch of feelers getting hurt just by what he said right there, and I fucking agree with him. I totally agree with him. I agree with this dude on a lot of shit. Now, mind you, I've already listened to this entire thing today, and I'm going to point out why I think John won't talk to me, because this highlights this very well. This guy is very articulate, knows what he's talking about, is on point with all of his shit. Now, he does make some weird points and things that I don't agree with all the way, but I'd say I agree with about 90% of the shit that he says. And when John gets to a point where he can't answer, he doesn't have a response, then he shifts the subject. He'll change the topic. He'll get like exacerbated and it's really funny to watch, actually.
And infer that you cannot be incarcerated for speech whatsoever. Like the Congress shall pass. We have the Supremacy Clause, which says that the Constitution is supreme law of the land. We also have a paper right there that says Congress shall make no laws in reference abridging the freedom of speech. And yet we have laws like assault in the state of Florida, which basically says that if you threaten someone and they're in reasonable fear of like imminent injury or death or battery or whatever, then that's a crime that you can be incarcerated with. Same thing with the Second Amendment. A textualist interpretation of the Second Amendment says that you can have an aircraft carrier or a nuclear bomb That's not the case in our country, and there's case law from conservative justices like Antonin Scalia that say other than what textualist interpreters of the Constitution do. Please surrender your right to privacy. Okay, when it comes to that stuff, oftentimes when you see cops getting pissed off, it's in reference to a traffic stop or it's in reference to a criminal detention. Okay. And I've had this before where if I've had to litigate it on the side of the road and there was a teenager telling another teenager, you don't have to identify yourself. And I was like, no, you do need to identify yourself because I have the exact description of the suspect and you fit the exact description. And the guy was like, what was the description? And then I repeat it word for word to him. And he's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Here's my ID. But realistically, if his teenager was giving his teenage friend bad advice and they got hyped up with each other that they didn't need to give me.
Who's close to learning new information?
The ID, I would be forced to detain them, forced to call backup, forced to arrest them for resisting arrest without violence. All right. And then sovereign citizen versus backup. I would say that if we take a look at it again, I'm sure there's abuse of power. I'm sure there's dirtbag cops. I'm sure there's cops who, for instance, whenever you're filming a public building and you walk up and ask them to identify yourself and the cops are actually out of bounds because filming a public location is not, a crime. I'm sure there's plenty of cops like that. But also, I'm telling you that the amount of people who think that they're not being detained versus the people who actually are detained, they just don't know it yet, is like very divergent. And we'll talk about that during this during this conversation. Also, in reference to vehicles, okay, we have at least several doctrines that are going to judge us. Bear in mind, I was in the police academy 10 years ago. I haven't done law enforcement for 6 years. So if I get something wrong, my apologies. But plain view, if I see you have an alcohol container and there are alcohol ordinances or there are drunk driving laws, I can detain you. Okay, if I see your alcohol, if I see your marijuana, if I see your pipe, okay. Mobile conveyance. They've argued that this is a private property, so therefore you shouldn't be able to do anything. Case law after case law after case law after case law has held that a conveyance is a hybrid space. It's simultaneously private and public. So even though it's your private property, you are conducting it in public, and therefore, if you do crimes or traffic infractions, you can be detained. Finally, there's probable cause, which basically states that if I probably think that you committed a crime and I have sufficient evidence to believe that you committed a crime, then I can detain you and probably arrest you and incarcerate you. But that's a lot, so we'll take it from there.
Yep. And it doesn't have to be specific crime either.
Perfect. Thank you, Connor. And as a kind reminder to the audience, we are going to get through our debate. We will move into closing statements. We will read and respond to your kind super chats. And then, of course, we will open up the...
This bitch is a fucking robot or something. She has not stopped smiling for the last 10 minutes that she's been on screen. It's very unsettling. Sorry if that's your friend or something.
Panel. So if you have questions or comments to add into this conversation, we will offer you the space to do so. Gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
Go for it, John.
Okay. So thousands and thousands of videos, day after day after day, billions and billions and billions of views of the cops violating the Constitution, all repeating the same things from coast to coast. Where are they getting this from?
You're going to have to go into the specifics because oftentimes I'm almost guaranteeing you it's
the license thing when someone's not detained. Because I brought up the fact that they try to threaten, arrest, and coercion to get a license from you, and the majority of cops get angry when you won't give it to them. And I'm talking about consensual encounters. They just walk up to you and like, there's one thing. How come they do that from coast to coast when in fact, almost every state you have to have RAS and PC to get a license?
Okay. Well, hold on. So we kind of need to break this down. Right? Mm-hmm. So if you're talking consensual encounter, typically any traffic stop is going to have an inciting violation. And there's so many violations.
Forget traffic stop.
Okay, so you're just talking about somebody's
standing on the sidewalk and someone calls the police on me because they don't like whatever. Cop has to respond because in this day and age they have to respond for every reason, it seems like. So they respond, he walks up to me, boom, he does this number. I say no thank you. And now Now we start this circus.
Well,
That you see in thousands and thousands and thousands of videos across YouTube, where
Sure.
the cop starts getting mad, starts lying. He starts saying, "You have to give it to me." If he'll say, "Am I being detained?" You're not free to go. They'll never answer a direct question. Like you
I
don't.
think that there's something that we need to talk about, which oftentimes is context. So, for instance, like let's say there was actually a case. I think it was out of California. There was a gentleman who was sitting on a park bench enjoying the sunset or whatever, and he was detained. And then the cop basically forced the issue, and he was like, "I'm in a public park. I'm sitting on a bench. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not drinking. I'm enjoying a public space. Why are you detaining me?" And the cop was like, "You have to give me your ID." And then eventually they beef, and then eventually the guy gets arrested. But what ends up happening is because we have body cameras now, the city ended up having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars because there was no reasonable, articulable crime that was there. However, typically, when it comes to law enforcement officers, there are, I guess, what you would call like quality of life crimes. So, for instance, trespassing, loitering, and prowling is kind of a vague one. Resisting without violence is a vague one that typically gets dropped by the state attorney, but it's, when in doubt, resisting without, right? So the whole point.
My only arrest in my life was for that garbage. But go on.
I'm sure you might not have been guilty of an underlying crime, but you might have been guilty of contempt of cop, right?
I was protesting an unconstitutional Fourth Amendment violating DUI checkpoint. Absolutely.
Has John got out and done any more DUI stuff since that arrest either?
Absolutely. They didn't like it.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, but I'm sure they hit you with the when in doubt, resisting without. They hit you with resisting without violence, and then it was probably dropped by the state attorney, right?
No, it wasn't dropped. Not even close.
Oh, okay. Well, we could talk about the circumstances of your protest or arresting incarceration if you want. But
no, you said it right. They use catch-all terms for when they don't have anything solid or constitutional or want to do actual police work. They do catch-all charges like disorderly and like resisting without violence. You're proving my point for me, but go on.
Well, no, but I mean, these things are things that have survived case law. And as I was saying earlier, there's textualist interpretations, which is effectively you just read the text of the Constitution and you think, oh, we're done now. Like we don't have to analyze anything else. But clearly the way that the Constitution has been interpreted for the past 250 years is we read the Federalist Papers. We read contemporaneous articles written by the people who were crafting the laws.
So
we read other judges who have judged things in the past 250 years.
Which Constitution do the police read? Which version?
I mean, I read the normal one.
How come I'm reading a different? The one I read is completely opposite to what I see them doing in video after video after video.
So let's hit one that I think is obvious, okay? Because I believe this for a really long time. The Second Amendment, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, okay? A textualist interpretation of the Second Amendment that is argued by libertarians all the time is that the clause is separate. So a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, okay? That's one clause. Second clause is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, all right? So the way that textualists have interpreted that is saying that any restriction on any concept of like firearms and capacity to bear and all that kind of stuff is an infringement upon the Second Amendment itself and therefore is invalid. Okay, that's a textualist interpretation of the Constitution of the United States. That's not the way that law has gone for the past 250 years. What's happened is they've made ordinances, they've made laws, city, county, state, saying that you can only bear weapons in reference to this context, or you can only bear these kinds of weapons.
Those are called infringements.
Okay, but you know what's funny is one of the most conservative justices in American history, Justice Antonin Scalia, said that there's no unlimited rights in the Constitution. Reasonableness is another metric.
Nothing unlimited, but when you're talking about a free country, you're always supposed to go towards freedom in the citizen, not the government, not the police officer, not the judge, and not the politician, who all have case law immunity from the actual sovereign, the people.
I don't think I think you've got it inverted, buddy. I think every society since
do I have qualified immunity? Do I have qualified immunity as a citizen, or do police have qualified immunity?
Police have qualified immunity.
So which one of us would be sovereign from the law then?
I don't know how you're using sovereign.
Sovereign is all of us have to do this. The sovereign is above the rest of us. So if I have to follow the laws and the police don't have to follow those same laws, that would make them the sovereign and me below them, because I have to follow the laws and they're sovereign from the laws. Sovereign immunity, and police have qualified immunity.
Can you
thus
give
they're
me
sovereign from the laws the rest of us have to follow.
Yeah. So sovereign, a supreme ruler, especially a monarch. Okay. So
especially,
so hold on.
Especially.
Okay. So hold on. So sovereign, a ruler. Okay. English common law arguably roots all the way back into Roman Republican law and Roman imperial law. Okay. And what it says typically is that in a dispute amongst citizens, you do have to defer to the state as like a neutral third party. Now, the sovereign gets, or the king gets, or the Caesar or the emperor or whatever, he gets a higher station within society because he's invested with the power and responsibilities of maintaining civilization.
So he has sovereign immunity.
But we do that in democratic societies as well, of course. Like, you don't have the rights or abilities. Like, you can defend yourself, but you don't have arrest powers. Arrest powers are deferred to the courts and law enforcement officers.
Wait, citizens don't have arrest powers?
I'm sure that you have citizens' detention powers or arrest powers, but I'm also sure that they're extremely limited in scope.
Okay, what's that mean? In
America, that means that a law
enforcement
America, officer has more sovereignty.
Right, we the people are the sovereigns in this country. We the people, not the cop who has qualified immunity, not the judge who has sovereign immunity, not the politician who has career criminal immunity for their whole life, plus security. The sovereigns are on the sovereign citizens are on the government side of the fence. Yet they have the nerve to call somebody like me, a constitutionalist, a sovereign citizen. Like, everything's backwards in government parasite land.
Well, okay, but what you're saying is this is not how it is. But then you're immediately saying that this is how society is operating. So which is it? Because you're saying that the Constitution is granting you broad authority in order to not have to defer to the state, but then the state is saying, no, you don't. And then you also just said that judges have sovereign immunity, that cops have qualified immunity.
I didn't ever say the Constitution grants authority. The Constitution is supposed to restrict the ultimate authority that judges and cops and politicians have now. And it's not
the Constitution puts limits on authority. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now that we've cleared up that little issue.
Yeah.
Okay. You understand that the entirety of the past 250 years of the United States says the opposite of what you're saying, right? And then also you're going with a textualist interpretation.
I keep hearing you say that, but okay. What am I getting wrong? Did I get something wrong?
No, I would say that what you're getting wrong is you need to read Federalist 29 and Federalist 46.
Enlighten me, please.
Okay, so
I don't think he understands what a textualist interpretation is. And he definitely doesn't understand the Federalist Papers and how it further evolves or expands on the Second Amendment. I mean, watching this gave me some insight into this dude's level of understanding, and he has a very, very black and white understanding of the Constitution. Absolute offense meant by that, John. You're a fucking idiot, dude. You no wonder these dudes have so many problems. This is so insightful, I'm telling you. It's one thing for me to come up here and just talk shit about this cat, but when it's on display, the retardation and the lack of understanding and needing a former police officer who is the kind of person that you rage against all the time is literally dog walking him and educating him through this entire thing.
So if you look at, I like using the Second Amendment because it's pretty clear, especially from a textualist perspective. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay. If you read Federalist 29 and Federalist 46, it's pretty clear that the founding fathers and whoever wrote 29 and 46, which I think are the only ones that actually address the Second Amendment or private arms or whatever, they're actually arguing not about people's right to keep and bear arms. They're arguing about whether or not they should even have a standing army. They're saying that the militia is the replacement for the standing army. And so as a result, states should have a limited coterie, a limited cadre of officers that they can appoint and that they can train and this, that, the other. But realistically, who is going to secure the United States of America is a militia, meaning like armed private citizens who are called into service during times of insurrection and during times of war.
And what country was this idea drawn from? Based on the founding fathers' interpretation and how they wrote things, their idea of a militia isn't what we have today with private citizens with their own little group. That's not what they had in mind with that. Do you know where they got what he just said, where all citizens are supposed to be armed and be part of a militia that's called upon by the country in times of insurrection and times of war on the home front? Do you know what country that idea was adopted from? Not the Romans, no. What's one? There's several countries, but what's one country that requires military service, and you can opt out of military service, but then pay a tax to do it? But every citizen of this country is required to have a gun in their home and know how to use it. What country is this that we drew this idea of a militia from? Not Israel, no. The fuck? Israel wasn't around when we... What the fuck? Come on! Not France. Is he Swiss? Sweden? What country has lots of guns? And you got to go into the military, or you can opt out of that and pay a tax. Not fucking Israel. We're talking about when our country was founded, when the fucking Constitution was written, when the Second Amendment was written. Israel wasn't even a concept then. Come on. Get with the program, folks. Great Britain? No. Switzerland. We already been over this. You guys like... that was drawn from another country. The Second Amendment's standing or militia is from the Swiss.
Okay. Now, within that conversation, though, they're not they're stating that like private citizens have the right to keep and bear arms, the right to keep and bear arms, but they're contextualizing it almost exclusively within volunteer military service. And so as a result, like our orientation, like self-defense is something that has emanated from...
Get on your fucking Googlers and then come back with the answer.
American culture as a whole. It has not emanated from like a contextualized understanding of the Second Amendment of the United States.
Okay, I don't know what you're trying to get to with all that.
I'm trying to get to, if you read just the Constitution, then you're not reading enough. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so
he's right.
You're saying I only read the Constitution?
I'm saying that if you haven't read the case law that is developed from the Bill of Rights, then yeah, you probably are you are guilty of reading too narrowly.
Okay, you've heard of the IRS, right?
Of course.
Okay, so you believe you have to pay tax on your labor, right?
Correct.
Okay, I read all of Title 26. You've heard of the...
You are guilty of case law that is developed from the bill.
So here's an important shift right here. I don't want it to just slip by unnoticed. Counterpoints is getting into the weeds on information or subject matter that I don't think John is comfortable with talking about. Now, he's talking about how the interpretation of the Constitution has developed over the last 250 something years with case law, with, whatever the fuck. It's not, the original document isn't applied the same way in modern times. And he's not understanding this, and he's wanting to avoid the subject. So now we're going to segue to fucking taxes. Pay attention to this shit.
Saying.
Okay. So you're saying I only read the Constitution?
I'm saying that if you haven't read the case law that is developed from the Bill of Rights, then yeah, you probably are you are guilty of reading too narrowly.
Okay. You've heard of the IRS, right?
Of course.
Okay, so you believe you have to pay tax on your labor, right?
Correct.
Okay. I read all of Title 26, Internal Revenue Code. That law does not exist. Does not exist. An American living and working in the United States of America is not required to pay an income tax.
What? We were talking about the Constitution, how it's evolved, the interpretation of it, and then how it's applied. Who gives a fuck if you read about taxes?
The government will come and take your property, SWAT team your house, empty all your bank accounts, close all your businesses down, and completely destroy your life.
Yeah, so aren't you
If
just
you don't
wrong?
pay that income, hold on. If you don't pay that income tax, that doesn't even exist.
Okay. So if you're saying this law doesn't exist, and yet we have a constitution stating that government is of, for, and by the people, and then we have these institutions and these organs of government that are working and enforcing their will upon you, and then the broader society is not rebelling against their alleged tyranny. Aren't you just a member of a democratic society?
You're defending.
Aren't you just a member of a Republican society?
Me?
Yes.
No, I'm a member of whatever the hell you call this, some fascist, socialist, garbage country we've become. This hasn't been a constitutional republic in a long time.
When do you think it was?
Probably the closest? Probably in the 1800s. Maybe early 1900s.
But
after 1913, we're done. Cooked. Once there's a central bank, it's over. Once you have a standing army, like in Minnesota right now, there's a standing army. And to me, the amount of police we have in this country is a standing army, where you risk getting your freedom impeded. To me, if a government employee impedes my freedom for 30 seconds, to me, it's the end of the world. You better have the biggest, baddest, most urgent reason to impede an American's freedom. That's how important it is to me. And people act like it's no big deal to get pulled over on the way to the grocery store.
Yeah.
It is a big deal. Freedom is a big deal. And when everyone's laissez-faire and all flippant about it, and all the cops are great, meanwhile, they're murdering people left and right. 3-4 people a day, the cops are unaliving. It's not. We are not a free country. This is all a facade. It's garbage. And I'm on the side of peace and nonviolence and a constitutional republic. And you're on which side?
Yeah, I'm on the side of the actual republic as it functions, not as you kind of like
wish
it
functions now as the fascist garbage.
What do you think fascism is?
Fascism is corporatism, as the biggest fascist in the world, Mussolini.
Fascismo is a bundle of sticks.
Said if you want to call it what it really is, it's corporatism, and that's exactly what we have in this country.
Hey, okay, and what did he mean by corporatism? Did he just mean corporations ran society?
Man, this is painful to watch. Turned out exactly like I thought it would. Bro, I watched this whole thing already. He gets fucking dog walked this whole time. He's getting educated. This isn't a debate. This isn't a conversation. John is learning some stuff here.
Yeah, corporations. All the big heads of corporations are intertwined with government.
Okay, no, that's not what he means by corporatism.
For those of you that don't know, this dude in the chat here, John Lang, that's fucking Audit the Audit. So this is another person in the chat that John Xlax really doesn't fucking like is Audit the Audit in the chat right here. So it's fucking funny. Johnny boy, whenever you finish your live stream with Fupa and you get around to watching this one, I just wanted to rub that in that Audit the Audit's in here talking shit about you. Cha-ching.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Corporatism is treating the nation state like a body, like a vital organ. Okay. So the economy is the heart. and the military is the skin, and the white blood cells are the cops, and the state is the brain, and all that kind of stuff. That's corporatism. And then fascists are flexibly authoritarian, which effectively means that they will do whatever it takes in order to get, seize, and maintain power. Okay? That is fascism, is political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. So once again, I would say, like, you're reading, which is great, and I love that you're reading, but you're not reading enough.
That's a good boy, Johnny boy. You're reading. Good job. Good job. You took it. You're reading. Great. That's a good boy.
Because believing that this is fascist, you could say it's like authoritarian within like certain realms or whatever. But if you compare it to the authoritarian fascist regimes of Nazi Germany, Franco Spain, Italy, or even like Pinochet Chile, like we are nowhere fucking near those societies.
I'm gonna have to disagree with him big time on this. The elements that it takes to start defining, fascism in an applicable sense in our society are actually fucking being met right now. If you're familiar with fascism at all, there are certain elements. There's a pyramid, there's a table, whatever. There's a graph. There's pinpoints that you got to meet to be able to call what's happening fast. You don't know what I'm talking about, then go fucking figure it out. There's all kinds of information about fascism on the internet. Don't just take the word as some dumbass says that shit on the internet like me. Go actually learn what the fuck it means, because it's not like a gotcha phrase. It's a real thing, and if it starts happening in our country, we're not going to have very much fun in America no more.
Why is that?
Because the dictator can't just walk in and say, "Hey, fuck you! I want your property. I'm going to kill you and take your shit."
Yes. Well, they don't do that here with the IRS.
Do you think there's a difference between you? Like, I don't. Okay, we'll avoid personal stuff. In Nazi Germany, they dispossessed entire classes of people and say that we do not believe that this is a part of our nation. These are not a part of our people. These are foreign entities. And so as a result,
like the Indian
tribe, detain them, we can ghettoize them, we can liquidate them, and we can seize all of their property. And that's what happened.
Isn't that how America was started?
Yes, started, but the Native Americans were not a part of our national body because they didn't recognize the sovereignty of the Republic of the United States. Do you have an equivalent since like 1776 besides Native Americans where we identified a segment of our society that was not a part of our society, violated their rights, liquidated them, and then seized all their property?
Wait, so America going all over the world, 190 countries, military bases everywhere. We're not a fascist.
No, we're like a liberal commercial empire.
Okay, you're just putting different labels on it. Honestly, at this point,
no,
okay.
I'm not. I actually gave you a very specific definition of fascism, and I'm telling you something else. So, do you know what liberal means?
I know there's different variations of liberal. Your Thomas Jefferson liberal versus today's liberals.
You emphasize liberty from government and freedom in general as a universal human good, right? Like maximal human freedom, that's liberalism, ideally.
I want to know how cops violate the Constitution, man.
We can go.
Well, we're getting to it. We're having an error here.
Back to it.
I want to know
maximal human freedom, that's liberal, and freedom in general as a universal human good, right? Like maximal human freedom, that's liberalism, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how cops violate the Constitution.
Don't answer the question. Just fucking switch the subject up again. Whoa. I'm glad this is online for everyone to see. Oh, bro, this is great.
Constitution, man.
We can go back to it.
I get you're a smart guy and you want to go.
My argument is that you're reading, but you're not reading enough.
I get that you're a smart guy and you want to go off on tangents that I don't understand, but can we just go back to some stuff that I do understand? Because the topics that you're talking about, they're too nuanced. There's too much context for me to absorb. My brain is getting fuzzy trying to think about all this stuff. Can we just go back to the simpler stuff like the Constitution?
I hear you. Let's just stick to basic freedom.
Okay.
Let's keep it real basic, because this is it's getting hot. It's getting difficult. My temperature is I'm overheating. You're making me nervous. Just simple stuff.
Sure. Which one?
Okay. How often should somebody's freedom be impeding it as a free American?
As minimally as possible.
So here's what I always tell everybody as a meter. If there's no victim, there's no damages, there's no trespassing, and there's no endangerment of the public, you should be a free person to live as an American, as a free person.
I agree with that.
Okay.
But guess what?
What?
Endangerment of the public is where you're going to bump into libertarians arguing about risky behavior. So, for instance, if you do 20 miles an hour over the speed limit or whatever, have you really hurt anybody? No. It's like a relatively victimless crime. But are you engaged in risky behavior that could end up hurting somebody? Absolutely. And so the state takes the ability to regulate that.
So if somebody wants to do heroin, you're fine with that.
The state takes the ability to regulate that through with which amendment, folks? Let's learn something right now. Which amendment grants the states the power to regulate the usage of their roads? Which constitutional amendment allows this? Come on. 10th Amendment. First person got it right. Thank you.
No, I'm not. I'm not a liberal.
Wait. Who's the victim?
The individual.
They're victimizing themselves?
Yes.
Oh, so you don't believe in my concept. My concept is if there's there's no victim, okay? About prostitution.
Yeah, same thing.
There's a victim in prostitution?
Well, I mean, I make a joke about it, but
This is a very complex, nuanced subject that I don't think is appropriate to bring up as like a counterpoint or a gotcha when you're having this type of conversation, because prostitution, you have to then separate what kind are you talking about, you know, the individual, which is sort of rare, and then the people that are being trafficked, because when it becomes a trafficking thing, then yeah, there are all kinds of victims. It's all kinds of a crime. So I don't like this argument being brought up. In general, I think that if you're weird enough to want to sell your body, then that's on you. I don't think that should be a crime. But yeah, 1000% that it's a problem in general because it allows for trafficking. That's the problem.
realistically, like, I want to turn Miami into like a sexually depraved like mecca for all the liberals and libertarians to go do whatever the fuck they want. But yeah, I think in the rest of the country they should, prostitution should be banned.
Why?
Because it's bad for society. It's bad for individuals.
So you're not a constitutionalist?
No, I think I am. I
See, I don't agree with that line of thinking right there. I don't think that something should be illegal because it might be bad for society. If a man or a woman wants to sell their body and they're doing it of their own free will, nobody's forcing them or trafficking them, then I don't see that being a crime. I mean, if that's something you're into, right on, but I don't think that should be a crime. I don't.
100% think I am. I don't think that the Constitution says that you need to tolerate endless amounts of crime just because you feel like it. I think that's very silly. Yeah, there are victimless crimes, but I would say that there are victims in said crimes.
There's victims and victimless crimes.
You make a good point. It's almost impossible to distinguish between trafficked and non-trafficked as well. You're right.
Yes, because so for instance, if you're trafficking tons of heroin into the United States for sale and consumption by Americans, you might be able to produce heroin in Afghanistan, traffic it through Europe, have it get to the United States, and then have somebody use heroin, and you might not kill anyone along that supply chain. Okay, let's say you have the world's most ethical heroin supply route. Okay, and yet what's happening when that person is consuming their heroin is that it correlates with total depravity, total economic depravity, total social depravity, their lives imploding, families getting destroyed, abandoned children, neglected family members, burnt cash reserves, all that kind of stuff. And so there's all these deleterious effects to drug addicts that I don't just want to go, oh, well, they're not hurting anybody else. Rubber.
Right. I think you have fucking what a liberal is like confused. This dude, You just said that you don't think that drugs should be legal because of the potential negative effects, the negative societal effects, not necessarily crime. So it shouldn't be legal. That's not a liberal mentality right there at all. So that's definitely, that dude is definitely not a liberal. That's why I hate when people throw that word around as like an insult, because if you actually understand what it is to be a liberal, then you should want to be one. That's limited government, that's freedom from all these fucking restrictions and shit. Both of these dudes should want to be a liberal. It's not an insult, but for some reason it's been like, it's been mutilated, and now it's something you slap somebody with that you're mad at. Oh, you're liberal. Like, okay, yeah, oh, my bad.
Because I'm not insane.
My man,
I just want
you're contradicting yourself a lot, man.
I do just want to kind of jump in just to let us know we are kind of like veering. It is still in the topic, but it's a very side note of it. So I didn't know if you wanted to try to bring it back to the police and actually violating the Constitution.
Well, once again, I think the thrust of my argument is that, like, you just don't believe the case law of the past 250 years, including stuff that's gone up in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. You just don't think it's valid. You think people wrote down words on the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and boom, that's it. That's all we have to go off of. It's not true.
I just told you there's no law that says you got to pay income tax, and they put people in jail over it. So even if
if I Google right now,
hold on. Even if there isn't a law, they will SWAT team your home and ruin your life.
Okay, so if I Google right now, when did Congress pass the income tax?
Hey, to the moon. I've never heard a cop speak like this man before. I'm impressed. That's kind of what I was thinking when I first originally watched this, that even though he's not necessarily right on a lot of the shit that he has said and is going to say as we continue to watch this, but if cops had even a basic understanding, or even he has an advanced understanding of a lot of this stuff. Imagine if all the cops had this kind of an understanding. You know what I mean? That's something that I was thinking. I've never heard a cop speak like this. I mean, I have heard there's highly educated police officers that you would be impressed by that you've probably never heard of. I've met a few here in Arizona that that's why I can't say all cops are bad. I can't in good faith say that because I know it's not true. I've met cops that are smarter than this fucking dude. Cops that have educated me on shit. So, no, it's not. I just wish that they were more plentiful.
Acts. I'm not going to find a specific piece of legislation that was passed probably in the late 19th, early 20th century.
They'll say the 16th Amendment, but just like you said, you have to read. You have to get into it. That's what started me in activism to begin with.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Why don't you just call your accountant and say which law requires an American living and working within the United States to pay an income tax? Not one of them can produce it. Not one.
Okay, why don't I just pull up the 16th Amendment to the United States?
Go ahead. The 16th Amendment says they can lay tax on any source derived, but that there's been Supreme Court decisions. You like the Supreme Court, right? That said that the 16th Amendment has given no new power of taxation. So whatever was before the 16th Amendment was after the 16th Amendment. And I'm an expert on this subject, so you're really going to waste your time if you think you're going to take a 5-minute Google search and...
No, I'll just read it out loud. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment amongst the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration.
Mm-hmm.
So is that not just Congress has the right to tax?
So there's constitutional taxes and there's unconstitutional taxes. So direct unapportioned taxes are unconstitutional, and indirect apportioned taxes like sales tax, like a tax where it's not mandatory through the barrel of a gun. That's the whole purpose of a constitutional republic. The taxes that the government brings in are constitutional. They're indirect. They're voluntary. It even says voluntary in Title 26. It's all based on voluntary compliance. And then the government takes that budget and they budget their country. But you can't do that You can't go and fight all these wars and have 1 million police officers in a police state and all this weaponry and control the whole world and become this empire with just indirect constitutional taxes. That's why they have direct unapportioned taxes, and it's through the barrel of a gun, because there's no law that says you have to do that.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I mean, I hate to go for
You're going to go to section 61. You're going to go to section 61, and then you're going to end up in title 26, section 861, T-through T-14, and it lists who's liable to pay a tax on their labor who lives and works in the United States.
Hold on. So the way that I'm reading it, and I'm assuming the way that it's going to be interpreted. So Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states. And there's no clause or period there. So wouldn't it be saying that you can't tax the different states differently? Like a portion, like it seems like there's a subject.
The 16th Amendment, in order for a tax to be constitutional, it had to be indirect and apportioned. Well, they didn't like that, because then you had to work within a budget, and you couldn't have a central bank and the IRS. So what?
They passed it the same year.
Passed what the same year?
They passed the 16th Amendment and they passed the federal income tax the same year. So you're saying,
correct.
Like, well, they wrote it this way, but then they passed a law immediately afterwards saying the opposite of what the amendment said.
Bro, how the fuck did we even get on taxes right now? Did he segue to taxes again and slip that? I didn't even catch it or something. It's like he's comfortable with this subject, so he keeps floating back to it. I fucking hate it when people do stuff like this. It's like, you know, there's this circle that we're supposed to stay in. The subject, this is the subject. And when you get uncomfortable being in this circle, you try to move the whole thing over to a smaller circle that's on your side where you're comfortable at, like taxes. It's the main topic he's been discussing with ChatGPT. Excuse me. He was not winning, so he changed the subject. Yeah. That's what you do. That's what I do. He knows what he knows, and that's all he knows. See, there's nothing wrong when when you're having a discussion like this, there's nothing wrong with just admitting that you don't know what the fuck that the other person's talking about. I don't have a problem doing that at all, because then we avoid all this weird segue side shit. I know a great tax lady. Yeah, I'll be like, well, I don't even know, because they're talking. I don't know anything. I mean, I have a loose understanding of taxes. That's why I'm listening to this shit and not saying much, because taxes are not a subject that I would even go into with him. As soon as he would go, if this is one of his tactics, like if I was trying to talk to this dude and he would want to bring up fucking taxes, that's what I'm talking about, is I would immediately say, I don't know anything about that. That's not what I want to talk to you about. Let's stay on point here. Change the subject, move to something you're more comfortable talking about, and okay, that's fine. I'm just going to tell you, I don't know what you're talking about, so. Because I fucking don't. Why I would sit up here and pretend and look like a dumbass?
So the Federal Reserve Act, the IRS, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the income tax are all one big Ponzi scam that was created because they didn't want to work within a budget, a constitutional indirect tax budget.
So he's taking law, he's adding a conspiracy layer to it, and then he's interpreting it all in his own way. Now, I might not know anything about the tax law and all this shit, but I understand what he's doing here. He's taking law, wrapping some conspiracy around it, and then interpreting it how he wants. That's why it sounds so fucking weird.
Budget. This way they could just print all the money they want with the fake Federal Reserve Bank. We've all know that the Federal Reserve is not a government bank, right?
Well, they didn't move to printing money until like the 1970s, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We took off the gold.
And let me tell you the elements of that. They have the tax law, and then it's a giant Ponzi scheme. So the tax law is a real thing, and then the Ponzi scheme is the conspiracy, and then but they didn't like that. That wording is his interpretation of everything. Do you understand? That's where I come to this conclusion at. He's got something real, the tax law. He's wrapping it in conspiracy and then interpreting it how he wants. So everything he's saying is fucking tainted.
We went off the gold standard in 71, but at the same time, this is all pre-planned.
Okay.
All right.
And do you want to go back to do you want to go back to where states, because before the Constitution was even written, each state had their own currency. Mm-hmm. But as a result of having their own currencies, they also had the problems of their own currencies, where fiscal policy and governmental policy were not unified. And so as a result, there were booms and crashes amongst the states that then had people like living and dying off of various currencies within the United States until we got rid of that nonsense. Weirdly enough, Bitcoin and all those like random speculative currencies are actually like a revival of the dynamics of the 19th century. And then also like Andrew Jackson attacked like the Federal Reserve Bank because I think it existed and then he destroyed it and then it came back again. But the whole reason why we have a central bank is to like manage monetary policy for the past like 200 years or 150 years. And it's way better than the 19th century booms and busts of random currencies.
That's not why we have.
Your perspective is tainted. Yours is. You see how I went into a full-blown explanation. I explained the elements of how I came to this conclusion, and then without just saying that, right? I gave you an example and told you, based on what he said, how I came to that conclusion. But fucking retards like you will just say, "Nuh-uh, your perception is tainted," without a fucking example. Please explain how.
We have a Federal Reserve Bank. That's not why we have a Federal Reserve Bank. And the Federal Reserve Bank is not a government bank. It's a privately owned bank.
I don't give a shit. If it's a central bank that still helps the United States government manage the flow of like Keynesian,
you don't give a shit if
gold standard economics. I don't give a fuck.
If private-owned families control your country's monetary policy, you don't give a fuck?
No, I don't give a fuck. Because let me ask you a question, okay? So here's the thing with the gold standard, all right? We have the value of $1. Hold on. Track me with this, okay? I want you to listen to this. So
good stuff.
Okay, so we have the gold standard through 71, right? And realistically, I think that you probably think that any currency the United States does have should be proportional to something that of actual tangible value. Am I presuming correctly?
You mean coin, like the Constitution says?
Sure.
Sure, okay. Specie money? Specie money, yeah.
Okay. So, at the same time, let's go ahead and talk about value real quick. So, how much is a sandwich worth to you right now?
Well, I'm not that hungry, so not that much.
Okay, so $5, $2, $10, whatever. Okay. Now say it's the apocalypse, and it's been like 30 days since you've eaten. How much is that sandwich worth?
Your life.
Right. And so the whole point of fiat currency is saying that a F-35 jet, an F-22.
This is such a fucking dumb analogy here. I don't really like this. That's a dumb take from, yeah. Conspiracy salad. I bet the cop is going to bring it up, maybe. Felix's very basic understanding of government. Government bad. You're so upset you can't audit. You threw the whole genre under the bus. You just, what the fuck? You just told me my perspective was tainted. And that's what you follow that up with? Classic. Somebody block that retard. I think you're just upset that I'm pointing out all the dumb shit, all the big dummies. All the big dummies is getting pointed out. Sound like a Zionist.
Raptor, the military industrial complex, TV screens, monitors, microchips, all of these things are and foodstuffs are more tangible and more real than a randomly, arbitrarily selected, the chosen it as a symbol of money. But realistically, like in an apocalyptic scenario, do you want a bar of gold or do you want a sandwich?
A bar of gold.
Well, not if somebody can walk up, not if you don't have a gun, right? Because if you have a gun, a sandwich, well, if you don't have a gun and you have a bar of gold and you have a sandwich, then a motherfucker with a gun can take both, right?
You mean I got 30 seconds to live and I got to pick between a sandwich, a gun, and a gold bar? I mean, you can set up the situation to make it whatever you want. But if I got...
But that's not even the point of what I'm saying. The point of what I'm saying is that, like, value is relatively arbitrary, and the things that we select to back our currency are still real, tangible things, even when we're printing money.
Like what?
Like dams, infrastructure, road, cars, fighter jets.
You can't put all of that shit. But you can't put those in your pocket. You need. I mean,
depending on what it is, I probably could. I mean, I got microchips that I put in my pocket right now.
You're gonna go chisel a little piece of dam and put a little concrete in your pocket?
No, but some poor African overseas is, and as a result, I'm gonna have a modern technological innovation that's miraculous in my pocket. The amount of like a human wealth that has been unleashed in the past 150 years because of these fiscal choices is insane. The commercial empire, you act like the commercial empire, the American liberal fascist.
40 trillion in debt.
And don't we make $30 trillion a year?
You don't care that a private family runs America's fiscal policy, and you don't care that we're 40 trillion in debt.
As long as it correlates with real economic. Okay, do you have you ever had a mortgage?
Yes.
Okay, do you have a mortgage right now?
Yeah.
Does it bug you that you're $100,000 to $150,000 in debt?
Does it what?
Does it bother you that you're in debt in order to own a house?
Yeah.
Okay, but what are you doing about it?
What do you mean?
Paying it off.
You're being economically productive in order to make sure that your debt is serviced, right?
I do the best I can.
Okay, that's the United.
Yeah, John. I mean, this is one of those times when I would be like, bro, we are veering. We need to go back to what we were talking about.
United States, man. That's what we're doing. We're servicing our debt through economic productivity.
Current United States, less than 100 years ago, one kid's to pay off his house and hand it down.
How long ago was that?
Less than 100 years.
Less than 100 years for sure. But it was the post-war period, because 100 years ago, back when we had policies that were more similar to what you want.
Bro, you're not a debater. You're a philosopher.
This is entirely on point. Back when we had the fiscal policies that you wanted, that in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, people didn't have pots to piss in because they had such an undignified economic life. The dignified economic life that your parents likely had, or maybe you enjoyed yourself, I'm assuming you're Gen X, but the point is that, like, the baby boomers, they only enjoyed like material success on such a broad scale. Number one, because redistributive economic policy like taxation, but number two, because of the collapse of the industrial world, in the United States being the last place that still had industry. So no, that entire, like, the 1950s, 1960s economic golden age was not birthed by laissez-faire 19th century style capitalism. It's a mirage. It's bullshit.
What were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about how libertarianism.
Bro, this is a subject with way too much complexity to be just glossing over it the way both of them are right now. What the economy in the versus 100 years ago versus now, like, there are so many fucking factors to why shit's so much more expensive nowadays, to why it's no. No. That's let's not talk about this. Let's go back to the Constitution and the cops because we are veering and yeah.
Is a great principle, but kind of R-slurred in actual application. That's what I was talking about.
Private families own the bank. It's good. 38 trillion in debt. It's good. And the reason families,
if they do a good job, yeah, I don't give a fuck.
And the reason 38 trillion in debt is a good job. And the reason families in the 50s could afford a house was because
of the post-war collapse of the industrial world, except for America. And also, do you want to take a look at taxation during World War II? Do you want to take a look at the tax rates during World War II, the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, the very era that you're talking about as unparalleled?
You mean
economic growth?
Income taxes?
The progressive income tax was insane.
You mean
it was like after you reach like a few $1 million, it was like 90% or something.
So can we have another one of them post-serial? What'd you call it?
Post-war industrial collapses of the world, except for the United States.
But we've been at war constantly. When's our post-war one person can afford a house dilemma going to start for us?
Well, I mean, arguably that's more of a. Well, actually, hold on.
This has completely devolved. Yeah. That's what I mean. Are supposed to have a fucking moderator. I don't know what she's doing. I'd be open to hosting this kind of thing on my channel with anybody so I can moderate this kind of thing because I'll be on both of their asses. No. What the fuck are you guys talking about?
It's going to happen if we didn't take mass immigration and we only had United States citizens, it would be about in 30 to 50 years where we have a baby collapse because we only have about like 1.55 babies per family. And so as a result, what's going to happen is the baby boomers are going to die out, the millennials are going to die out, and then the Zoomers are going to drive around in relatively empty cities because there's going to be so few fucking people. So then you'll probably be able to buy 5 houses 50 years from now.
Right on, man.
So you just got to survive 50 years and then boom, you can buy as many fucking houses as you want.
We got this, bro.
Well, I mean, I planned on importing a bunch of Hispanics who love to have kids and don't like condoms. That was my plan. That way they can pay taxes to keep the whole, house of cards moving.
Just don't do it in Minnesota.
Well, right. I mean, that's why I think Trump's wrong. It's because he's not letting the Hispanics who love to have babies in. I think he's wrong. I think it's a bad policy.
What do you think of that Minnesota thing, man?
I think that it's going to be so here's the thing. So for those of you who don't know, we're talking about a cop shooting. There was Renee Good earlier in the week. There was a cop shooting within the past 24 to 48 hours.
For those of you who don't know, we're talking about a cop shooting, except we haven't talked about that at all. We have talked about the tax and the economy. And that's pretty much all I remember so far.
Basically, an ICE officer. Well, hold on. I should back up a little bit. I'm going to narrativize it for people who haven't seen it.
Narrativize it?
ICE is conducting an operation.
Narrate.
There's a woman yelling at them and a man's cell phone filming them doing their thing. ICE walks over, starts acting a fool, shoves the lady, and then the guy who's videotaping steps between ICE and the cops and kind of like puts his arm out where he's like holding on to the lady to make sure that she's not getting like beat up and yoked up, but he's also putting his arm out towards ICE. ICE pepper sprays him or whatever, and then like 6 agents dogpile him. And while they're dogpiling him, because it's basically a monkey trying to fuck a football, excuse my French, what happens is one officer runs over and yanks the pistol out of the guy's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock holster or whatever, but he screams gun. And so simultaneously, an officer that was standing next to him thinks that he's being warned about a gun and shoots the guy in the back, even though the gun's already gone, and he kills that guy. That's the description of the events as far as I see it.
Yeah, he's missing the shot that came before the rest of them all shot. So there was one shot, then there was a pause, a noticeable pause, and then in unison they all fired. And it's my personal belief that when the weapon was taken off of Mr. Preddy or whatever his name is, that it discharged. That scared them all. And the sympathy fire kind of thing. Should it have happened? No. Was it right? No.
It's going to be a bad shoot in that the threat was gone by the time the trigger is getting pulled. The reason why that cop is not going to be incarcerated, though, is because he's going to say, I was acting in good faith. I did not see the gun get pulled away. I heard another officer scream gun, and I presumed that the suspect was pulling it, which is why I shot him. And that's why he's not going to get incarcerated. What's that?
Immunity. They also have immunity, police officers.
Well, I mean, sovereign immunity is for civil suits, not criminal statutes, but you're right that they're probably going to close ranks and they're not going to charge him with a crime because they're going to say that he was engaged in the lawful performance of his duties. And even though he did a homicide, he reasonably believed that there was imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. And therefore, he pulled the trigger, not having the entirety of the information. But the death was effectively like it's like an accident. It's not the same thing as a murder.
Why were they jumping on top of him? Why do you think? Because what?
Because they were attempting to detain him, because they were attempting to detain another lady, and he put himself in there.
So when the cop came and shoved the other lady, that was his attempt to detain her?
Well, I don't know. But yeah, probably. If he's knocking her to the ground, then that way he can get on top of her and put her in handcuffs. Yeah, probably.
So generally speaking, you just give police the benefit of the doubt.
If they're acting within the rules and principles that I was trained on, then yeah.
But not the Constitution.
Well, you would have to tell me. So for instance, like, where does the peaceably assemble portion of the First Amendment, because we're talking about the First Amendment and Second Amendment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the peaceably assemble portion of the First Amendment, that is true. And I have freedom of conscience and freedom of speech. I'm in my own domicile. I'm allowed to say, relatively speaking, 99% of what I want right now, except for the N-word. But as a result, like, cops, generally speaking, cannot fuck with me. But if I'm in a public place and I'm interfering with a law enforcement operation, even if I do it as a protest, even if I do it as civil disobedience, even if I'm doing it on purpose, I can still be detained and arrested, of course. So yeah, there's limits to your speech. Like I said, there's no unlimited right.
Did he do something that was illegal?
Who?
The guy whose life was taken.
I would say that, like...
Personally, I would argue that it could be seen as a physical obstruction for a federal officer that was attempting to make a detainment. That's how the courts are going to see it, too. When he gets in between the officer, like approaching some, I mean, you don't know what the fuck the cop's going to do, but they're going to say that he was going to arrest her. So when he says, I was going to arrest her in court, and then they're like, okay, so when he got in between them, he was effectively obstructing, physically obstructing, interfering. That's why he got thrown on the ground or pepper sprayed, and then they were trying to arrest him before they killed him. Yeah, Woody, I don't know what that meant at all. That was kind of weird. It was a very unfortunate situation, yes. You may be right, but he was only trying to protect a woman from a... That's not an argument. That's not a legal-based argument. That's a feelings-based argument. Okay? Those arguments mean nothing. They don't mean anything. That's like what you talk with your neighbor about. Okay, that's the kind of conversation you have with your neighbor in a public setting or in a courtroom. That shit doesn't fucking matter. You don't have a right to protect. Yeah, I mean, when a cop is deemed to be doing their job lawful, which, it's not up for you to decide that. That's the courts that decide that kind of shit. I mean, we have set this all up for this way, and then when something goes wrong, then you're like, yeah, but he was trying to protect, like that. No. It's It's a fucking cop, a federal agent at the end of the day. They're out working. Like, what do you mean? It's not a street gang. It's not like random people. It's not like a group of people that are fucking with this lady, because then, yeah, absolutely protect her. They're random people. But we, I guess it doesn't really matter, but the point I'm trying to make is you can't call it, well, he was trying to protect her. You're obstructing. I've bitched and moaned about this for years, because cops will always tell you that I'm interfering by talking to somebody. That's not fucking interfering. I have to physically get between you and another subject. I don't know how many times I've said this kind of thing. Like, I'll never backtrack on this. It's physical interference. That's how the courts are going to look at it. That's how the cops look at it in the moment. That's why he was getting arrested. Like, I know that if I do that shit, I'm going to get arrested. Does that make sense? Exactly. It's not a big deal, but it is against the law. You are not allowed to physically obstruct peace officers, law officers, federal agents. You're not allowed to fucking do that shit. You can't justify that. He didn't have his pants down and was drooling on himself like he was about to take advantage of the woman. If that's the scenario that happens, then yeah, obviously you gotta step in and protect her, right? Then your argument might make a little bit of sense. But he didn't have his pants down and he wasn't drooling on himself, looking at her like she was a snack. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to word this a different kind of way, but that's the scenario where, yeah, you might be justified. They were conducting an operation. They're in the street, and this officer's already messing with some woman, and then you start getting in between them. You think that that's okay? What the fuck? And I'm a bootlicker for thinking this, right? Or I'm some like what a sellout now because this is how I've always thought, but only the reverse. You've only seen me argue against it's not interference. And that's my exact argument. Me talking to somebody at a traffic stop or having a conversation or talking to the cop is not interference. It's not obstructing, even though they throw those terms around all the fucking time. And then I have to tell them, no, I have to touch evidence. I have to get between you and a subject, or you and whoever you're talking to. I have to physically interfere some kind of way. I mean, I've said this for years. It applies here too.
If you're told by cops, if you're snatched up by cops and you don't immediately go to the ground or whatever and surrender, then that can be construed as resisting without violence.
Okay, so comply or die is basically where you stand. Comply or die.
Or you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride.
Same thing.
That's what I say.
Comply or die. So
no, I say you can beat the rap, you can't beat the ride. So what I mean by that is that
I've been hearing that since the 80s, bro.
What's that?
I've been hearing that catchphrase since the 80s. I know.
Well, it's a great phrase because it keeps people from being killed. Your advice gets people killed.
What advice did I give?
Well, you said comply or die, and you said that derisively.
That's the government's policy.
That doesn't make any sense. This counterpoints dude says your advice gets people killed, and then he follows that up by saying that his advice is comply or die. I think his advice would be you need to comply. So his advice at its base wouldn't get anybody hurt. So that's why it didn't really make any sense to me. I don't know if anybody else caught that.
See.
Okay, but you're saying that derisively. You should comply and you can beat the rap, but very often you cannot beat the ride.
Okay, so the founding fathers should have just complied.
No.
Why
They actually wrote an entire piece of paper about why they didn't comply.
Why didn't they?
Because they felt that they had a government that didn't represent them.
You're getting it now.
No, I'm not, because I still live in a Republican democracy. I still vote in elections. Just because you don't like your representatives doesn't mean that you aren't represented.
Who am I represented by? I'm a constitutionalist. Who represents
whatever district you live in? You have a congressman.
Massey. Thomas Massey represents me, and he's in Kentucky, and I live in Florida. So where's my representation?
Move to Kentucky if you want that representative. But at the same time, I'm assuming you participate in local.
I want a constitutionalist. Sheriff, congressman, judge, they all swear an oath to the Constitution, and every single one of them violates it happily on camera.
Your neighbors don't agree with your interpretation of the Constitution of the United States. So if you want a representative who perfectly represents your ideology, you probably need to move to Kentucky.
The founding fathers agree with me.
I'm a huge fan. I don't think so, but I'm a huge fan of Thomas Massey in reference to like forwarding the Epstein files. Not so much a fan of Thomas Massey believing in contrails and other stupid bullshit like that.
The founding fathers don't agree with me?
You would have to show me a specific.
The founding fathers don't agree with me.
Topic that the founding fathers and I disagree on.
You think the founding fathers? What would you think the founding fathers would think of people carrying a plastic slave card around everywhere they went and having social security numbers?
As long as they didn't have to present it, as long as they weren't committing crimes, I don't think they give a fuck.
You think the founding fathers would say, yes, put a plastic slave card in all of our pockets, and as long as we do X, Y, Z, we won't have to present it to you? You think the founding fathers started shooting?
You don't have to have your plastic slave card if you don't. Don't people endlessly bitch about how people are?
I hate this argument right here about wasn't the founding fathers, bro. Let's think in reality here. The idea of the technology that we have today and the way things have evolved, like you can't even begin to have a sane conversation or even argument about this because the realities are so different. If you took our technology today and beamed it back to then, to when the fucking founding fathers were around, they would burn you at the stake and think that you were a fucking witch. So the idea that how would they feel about this card and that what the fuck, that doesn't even make sense to me. Doesn't even make fucking hundreds of years ago, they would have fucking burned your ass if you busted out a cell phone. So the idea of a slave card makes zero sense to me. It's a different reality. It's a different fucking reality. So this argument, this conversation is dead upon arrival. It makes zero sense. It's pointless to continue with it.
Voting in elections without ID. So there's hundreds of thousands of Americans, maybe millions of Americans running around without their slave card. You want the slave card because you want to drive a car. And that's been deemed a privilege and not a right.
Deemed?
Yes.
By who?
By your peers, by your society.
No.
Hold on. Let's just go one at a time.
Not my peers. Not my peers. The guys with the guns who stopped following the principles of freedom deemed my travel is now a privilege. That's who deemed it. The guy who's willing to take your life if you decide to resist their oppression against you. That's the difference.
Power has worked.
You've decided that you've deemed it in your own imagination. The fact is, Americans are supposed to be free people.
You pretty much are.
No, pretty much my ass. You can't even go to the store without your freedom being impeded. You can't cut a tree down in your backyard without paid permission. If your grass gets too tall, a guy with a gun will show up at your door. Which America? What state do you live in, bro?
I live in Florida. I live in Central Florida.
Dude, I've been living in Central Florida for the last 20-some years.
You guys are probably living right next door to it.
I'll throw a rock at him.
Walk down the street and say hi.
What city do you live in?
You don't have to say.
Pretty much Orlando.
So Lakeland. Okay, cool.
Okay.
My mom lives in Frostproof. I had restaurants in Frostproof. Grady Judd is the biggest piece of garbage in the world. Doesn't even put body cams on his guys. Still fighting Richard Nixon's drug war. Like, the America you believe in is not a constitutional free republic. It's not. You're supporting something completely different.
I think you're a textualist. I don't think that you've read further than the actual text of the Constitution of the United States. And I think there's 200 because you're reading one thing and nothing else. So hold on. Let me back up real quick, though, because this is why I'm no longer a libertarian. Okay,
I've
are.
never been one.
You talk like one.
I've heard that before, but Bill Maher says he's a libertarian.
That's so funny that John says that he's not a liberal libertarian, because and this dude says that he talks like one because he 1000% does. All your ideals, John, and the way you think, that fits into a liberal's perspective. Or maybe you don't realize that, or maybe you just don't understand what liberal is. But all this limited government freedoms and that's the fucking liberal, bro. What are you even talking about?
He's a gun grabbing piece of shit who hates the Constitution. So I'm not one of those people.
Okay, so what
term? Constitutionalist.
Okay.
Plain as day.
Okay.
Very simple.
The reason why
The opposite of police.
I think you. Well, hold on. I'll tell you about libertarians, even if you don't consider yourself one. Okay.
Tell me.
Libertarians oftentimes are individualist. Okay, they believe that we're just these like islands, and we're born, and then we're endowed with these rights by our creator, and they're sovereign and inviolable. That has not happened in the history of the fucking planet. So while I love the Declaration of Independence, and I do find the words very pretty, and I do think we should organize our society around it, I don't find it to be literally true. Okay, force, violence is what backs up societies.
That's correct.
And so as a result, what's happening is you're appealing to all these flowery words that I think you misunderstand from a piece of paper, but you're fucked. The reason why you've paid your income tax is because all the people who misunderstand differently than you will come arrest you if you don't.
The world was drastically different when the Constitution was written. Oh yeah, very much so.
But that's the predicate for all societies.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the predicate for all societies.
Except a constitutional republic. That's the whole
point.
That's not
even true.
We're supposed
How do you maintain a constitutional republic if you don't have somebody who's enforcing the laws of said republic?
The laws are for the people, not the government. That's the whole point of this country and the experiment of America, is that we're not like that. We're different than the countries that use the barrel of a gun to control everybody. That's the whole point of the American experiment. Like, you're proving my point for me. You're exactly right. The only reason we pay an income tax is because we're not organized like the founders were, and they have guys, just like in Minneapolis, that'll just come and storm your house. And unless you're willing to throw your whole life away, you're not going to get your constitutional republic back. It's gone.
This is where it's already silly. We had the Articles of Confederation for like a decade or two before we had the Bill of Rights. And then some of the bills were passed in the late 19th century and early 20th century.
What's that mean?
So the entire amendment.
I'm going to talk louder and make my point more valid. That's fucking that's hilarious. Yeah. Oh my God, dude. This is embarrassing. Oh yeah. He started off with "How's it going, sir?" to now he's like fucking. He's heated right now for sure.
Process was like designed so that we could change the law as we went around. And what's funny is you keep saying that the 16th Amendment doesn't permit the kinds of taxes that we're currently under.
Correct.
And yet it was passed the same, the taxes that you're saying are illegal were passed the same year as the 16th Amendment. So how did the legislators get done passing the 16th Amendment and then they were like, oh, but I'm going to write a law 10 seconds later that's unconstitutional based off of the amendment I just passed?
They write unconstitutional laws all the time. A motorcycle helmet law was unconstitutional and it stood on the books for decades. The open carry law in Florida was unconstitutional, but it was still on the books for decades. They passed unconstitutional laws like it's candy. It's like their favorite thing to do. What are you talking about?
Okay, so hold on. We're going back to the Second Amendment because we're talking about the open carry law, okay? So you're saying that your interpretation of the Second Amendment is that any restriction on firearms is actually an infringement upon your Second Amendment.
Any? I didn't say that, no.
Okay, well, hold on. So let me test your limiting principle, though. Okay, so I have a pistol and I want to conceal carry or whatever. Should I just be allowed to go into like a delivery room, like a baby delivery room, unchallenged?
Is it your baby?
No.
You shouldn't be able to do that with or without a gun.
Okay, what if it's a public place?
They're delivering a baby in what, a public
What if
lobby?
it's a public hospital? Am I entitled to be? It's a public hospital. It's funded by taxes. Am I allowed to be in every part of the hospital? I mean, I'm paying for it.
Except the restricted areas, yeah.
Okay, so now I want to take my Second Amendment and I want to take the Second Amendment into the restricted areas. Why can't I carry a pistol into a restricted area? It's a
What?
public hospital. My taxes are paying for it. Why can't I take a gun into a nursery?
Let me answer you. You can't take any part of your body in there in the restricted area.
Why not? It's a public hospital. I'm paying for it.
Because
I'm a
there's
taxpayer.
restricted areas. You're paying for a public jail too, but it doesn't mean you get to go chill with the inmates inside the cell.
Okay, so in that case, is my right to keep and bear arms being infringed?
Not in the public areas, no.
Okay. So hold on. So I shouldn't be allowed in the areas where let's say that my mere presence. Let's say we're talking about the NICU, right? So I could contaminate the NICU and I could hurt or kill people.
Why?
What's that?
Why would you be able to do that?
The NICU is the natal intensive care unit. So
I know.
Okay. So what I'm saying is the reason why that's typically a restricted area is because I could hurt or kill people, right? That's why I can't be in there.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a limitation on my right, right?
No, it's not.
Why not? It's a public hospital. I'm paying for it. It's my taxes. Why can't I go in there?
Because I already told you there's restricted areas in public places.
Okay, why can't I go into the restricted areas? My taxes are paying for it. What's the underlying reason? Why can't I go into
because
a nuclear facility?
those areas are restricted because they need them restricted so they can operate properly. That's
Okay.
why they have areas for the public and areas that are for the employees. Just like any other business.
Is that not a
Just like any other
reasonable
business.
infringement upon my rights?
Your right to do what?
Well, I mean, I would say peaceably assemble.
You can peaceably assemble in public.
Okay, but you're saying that the Second Amendment can't be violated. And effectively, like, you're allowed to own what you want and you're allowed to, relatively speaking, be where you want as long as that place is public. What I'm trying to communicate to you, I'll stop being a smartass, I'll just say it, is the point is that there are public institutions that have restricted areas because we've used our reason, because we're effectively reasonable apes, in order to say that if we go someplace, then this bad consequence could happen. And so we're going to curb your ability to do this thing. That exists throughout the entirety of the Constitution of the United States. There's 250 years of case law that says, like the right to peaceably assemble. Okay, you can peaceably assemble in front of a public building in a public square. And as a matter of fact, sometimes you have to get a permit so you're not disrupting other people. But you can't peaceably assemble on a highway because you're impeding upon the freedom of other people.
The reason you can't peaceably assemble on a highway is because it's not peaceful.
No, it is peaceful. You're just linking arms. You're hanging out. You're singing Kumbaya. You're smoking pot.
You're endangering the public. It's not peaceful.
Okay, well, I mean, it is peaceful. All the traffic is stopped. I'm smoking weed. I'm hanging out. I'm at the drum circle, bro. I'm just playing like 1970s rock and roll songs. We're so peaceful.
I thought you were more serious, man.
No, I am pretty fucking serious because I think once you start going down this road, you realize that the state is the vehicle through which we curb people's freedom, and we have to argue about where the limits of those freedoms are. And the sovereign citizen constitutionalist bullshit is too far. You're not acknowledging 250 years of case history. That's not my fault that you don't think laws exist.
And there is the fundamental problem with Felix's understanding of all this. What he just said. You're not acknowledging the evolution of the Constitution through case history, through precedent in court cases. The Constitution is interpreted through the Supreme Court and in other decisions, but mainly through the Supreme Court and how things are applied. And his argument is based from a point of not acknowledging all of that. That's the whole problem here. I hope you're realizing that. John and a lot of these other dudes seem to have this weird perception of they want some kind of anarcho fucking constitutional society type shit, right? And it's really weird what their ideals are because it's not realistic. It's never been realistic in the history of humanity. And he's been dog walking him through this whole conversation, basically explaining that. It's funny. It's funny to watch this. I understand why you won't talk to me now, John. I don't want to debate, John. I just want to have a conversation. And I can tell that I can see why you wouldn't want to. Yeah, but what about my rights? This has caused so much bullshit. Everyone has lost their way. What do you mean about that? Hmm? This has caused so much bullshit. Everyone has lost their way. What are you talking about that? Damn, I am lagging pretty good, huh?
Which
Unless
one?
they're outside of the Constitution of the
Which
United
one?
States, it's not my fault.
Which one?
I mean, which one do you want to talk about?
Pick
Do you want
one.
to talk about Terry versus Ohio? Do you want to talk about what do you want to talk about?
Oh, okay, that's a good one. So Terry versus Ohio basically eviscerated the Fourth Amendment probable cause standard. So in order to amend the Bill of Rights, you need, what is it, 2/3 of the states to make an amendment to the Bill of Rights?
Yeah.
Well, the courts in Terry versus Ohio said, 2/3 of the state, Fourth Amendment. Some racist cop in Cleveland, where I'm from, it was named John Terry, or Terry was the guy who he victimized because he was a black dude and he was walking back and forth in front of a jewelry store. So because one racist cop found the guy and he guessed right that he had a gun on him, the Fourth Amendment got eviscerated. That's not constitutional.
Wait, okay, so just to be clear, the society that you want to win in, okay, so you see a sketchy guy walking back and forth in front of a jewelry store.
Uh-huh.
You stop him and detain him.
No, I wouldn't stop and detain him.
And you pat him down for your safety. You find a firearm. You find burglary tool. You want him to go commit the crime first.
Why am I detaining him? Why would I stop and detain him?
Because you see a dude wearing a hoodie in July,
Uh-huh.
and he's pacing back and forth in front of a business that's been robbed repeatedly.
Okay, what crime is that?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's possession of burglary tools was one of the things that they got him on. I'm also pretty sure it was like possession of a firearm. Like, we could take a look at whatever he was convicted of.
So you don't know the case. The case is a super racist cop.
It's been 11 years.
Excuse me?
It's been 11 years since the last time I actually read Terry versus Ohio.
Okay, it was some super racist cop from way back in the day who just decided to stop him illegally. And the court sided with the cop like they almost always do to this day, and it's even worse now. And said, no big deal, just some black guy walking back and forth on the sidewalk.
Hold on, but can you steel man why they said he was allowed to stop the guy?
Yeah, I can steel man that. Just like at steel man, somebody in the 60s would look at you and say, you look like a crazy kook bag, and why is that guy wearing a beard in the summertime?
Well,
But if we start going by societal norms instead of what is actually freedom and what isn't, we end up with, I'm a racist cop. I don't have any standards at all. The courts are on my side. I have qualified immunity. The judge has sovereign immunity. The citizen gets mushed like an old cigarette into the pavement, and then we're not a sovereign people anymore. And you got people like you defending that garbage.
Yes, because you haven't steel man the case. The whole point of the case was that I have no idea whether or not that cop was racist or not. He was right. And so what ended up happening was...
He was right about what?
He said...
There is a lot more to cover in that, but I don't think I can do this much longer. This dude's voice is hurting my brain. His inability to both of their inabilities to stay on topic, and you can tell that the emotional level is getting raised a little bit. The counterpoints guy wasn't cussing at all, and he is a little bit more than he was now. John's doing more yelling. I'm gonna finish this. We'll do number 2. That was fun. I'm gonna put up a link here in a minute. I think I lost brain cells. Shit. Oops. Wrong fucking pinned comment. There you go. I have a headache from trying to understand all the hoops John was jumping through. Oh, shit. Yeah, that's funny. Well, oh, I have a better understanding of why old fat boy is avoiding me. It's okay. How long did that go on? Oh, there's another couple hours. There'll probably be two more live streams to finish it. Do they eventually confess their gay love for one another? Fuck. I don't even know, man. Yeah, that link's up there for any fucking, not anybody, but you know. No. No, Eye of the Night, no. Nope. Nope. No, definitely not. Ooh. For that length of time? I don't know. Depends on how it devolves, because it's definitely going to devolve. This started off with like no tension, you know what I mean? Look how worked up he gets when he doesn't understand things, or you know, when he thinks he's on a roll or something. It's yeah, I'd probably entertain him. I'll be a third party moderator for you. Nah, he wouldn't want to do nothing like that. You're my mod in my chat. He would immediately be like, "Nah, it's a bias. No, no." I don't think that would be a good idea. $15 a month for YouTube Premium. Yeah, I think it's worth it. I pay that. I pay it. I pay it. Third party mod? No, nobody that's in my chat that chats a lot. I don't think that'd be a good idea. Nope, nope, nope. I wouldn't be biased. I'd just call him gay a couple of times. Oh, shit. Well, if there's anybody that wants to argue with me or challenge me on something, the link is in the chat. You've got a few minutes to do that. I want to hear Fupa defend his actions. Good luck with that. I think I got time for one more bowl and a cigarette, and then I'm gone, folks. If you have any, dumb questions or something, you want to chit chat, that's what the chat's for. The link is for, crybaby little girlies. The little girly man. The little girly mans. What's effing funny? What do you think about Tyrant Terminator's abuse history? Yeah, I'm definitely gonna end this. I think it doesn't look good, but it's the last instance of it was a decade ago, right? And the only reason that I even had a problem with the whole Griftifer situation was the lying and then grifting about the whole thing to get GoFundMe money and lawyer money and super chats and shit from people watching his nonsense lies. That was my problem with that whole shit. I don't know what his situation was, what all that was back then, but I don't know. It's not. My unforgivables are predatory crimes against women and children. Okay? These are the things where it doesn't matter how fucking long ago it was, doesn't matter the circumstances, I don't care. Those are my unforgivables. Do you understand? I'm trying to avoid screwing myself here on YouTube out of my $20. Have I been watching the Afroman trial? No, I haven't actually. I get you. We can still have good intentions even if the person is a woman beater. I mean, yeah, dude. Yeah. Yeah, you have a propensity for violence towards people in general, then you see if I were to judge him on that kind of stuff, then then all this could be brought up about my stuff. It's just a difference. It actually, as far as the law is concerned, the crimes that I went to prison for are much worse. So it's hard to be judgmental. Putting their faces on the internet. Oh, I know, it's funny. Wanking at the library. Yeah, I saw that. Love the chicken coop. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Mentally competent thing. That was cool sitting outside with you and the chicken. Later, concerned citizen. Appreciate you being here. Oh, my legs are so sore. I went out and trimmed goat hooves yesterday. I think yesterday, yeah. I gotta do the little goat here in the next day or two. I gotta wrestle that bitch down. I think I'm just gonna hog tie her. Excuse me. Favorite rooster is the red one? Yeah. Oh yeah, they're pretty birds. Pretty birds. Lasso and hog top. Nah. I don't have to like rope them to get them. They're friendly, but as soon as you start nipping on their fucking toes, they don't like that. So then they start getting squirmy and wanting to get away from you. Excuse me. Hmm.